after being indicted by a federal grand jury Friday, Bannon faces 2 charges of contempt of Congress for refusing to answer questions from the bipartisan House committee. If convicted, he could face up to a year behind bars and a fine of up to $100,000. Bannon, defiant and delusional, as usual, said things today like, quote, "We're taking down the Biden regime," end quote, as he turned himself in. Joining us now, Harry Litman, former Deputy Assistant Attorney General, former U.S. Attorney Charlie Sykes and Claire McCaskill are still here. Harry, your thoughts?
Well, look, he wanted to be defiant. He relishes this role of being a kind of swashbuckling villain. My main thought, doesn't matter. He's out of the game now, the main game, which is the January 6th Select Committee. He's on a different track. We don't care about him anymore. We don't care about his testimony. What we care about is the changed motivation of the other people, like the Mark Meadows of the world and the Peter Clarks of the world, who now are looking at a real possibility of stakes if they try to flout their nose at Congress the way Bannon has done.
Charlie, it's my understanding from the contemporaneous reporting at the time that he groveled for a pardon. This is not a guy who is really, fired up to go to jail, perhaps. I mean, what do you think is really going on?
Well, he's loving this right now. Look, Steve Bannon has described himself as a Leninist. He postures as a revolutionary, and so he is very clearly relishing all of this. And I think people need to understand that. And Harry's absolutely right. The real significance of these charges will be in raising the stakes for others that might have to pay these legal bills. But as people look at Steve Bannon and they listen to him as he is bragging about creating a constitutional crisis, decertifying the election, understand that right now this man is the tip of the spear of the former president of the United States, the man who would be president of the United States again, and that Steve Bannon really does embody the chaos and the anti-democratic fervor behind all of this. You want to get a glimpse of what America's future looks like? Possibly in 2024. Look at Steve Bannon. There's a reason why Donald Trump sitting down in Mar-a-Lago is putting out statements endorsing Steve Bannon. I mean, they may have had a messy divorce, but they have made up. And clearly, look, Steve Bannon is not afraid of this process. He is enjoying it. He loves being the martyr, and he intends to use this to raise money and to build his movement. And maybe he's hoping for another pardon. And by the way, remember that he was pardoned because he was ripping off. But remember he was pardoned for ripping off members of the Trump base, getting them to give money, millions of dollars, for his bogus wall scam. I mean, the guy is a grifter all the way down, and yet here he is right in center in MAGA world.
What does that mean at this point, Claire?
Well, first of all, I think there's something that is hysterically funny about the fact that Donald Trump, who was so focused on how people looked, that they are perfectly groomed and that they are specially cast for the part, and this slob, this disheveled slob, is his face. I mean, it is nobody cutting a swath of handsomeness and crisply tailored suits. This guy looks like he just rolled out of bed with a hangover. I mean, it is ridiculous that this is the face of Donald Trump. And the other thing I find hysterical about today, first of all, we're giving him a lot of attention. Hopefully it goes away quickly. But secondly, guess what his defense is? A snivelly little coward, little fraidy cat. My lawyer told me to do it. He changed lawyers so he can blame his lawyer for his defense. Now, it wasn't that I'm doing this for America and I have a right to stand up to Congress. It's, oh, my lawyer made me do it. I mean, what a little coward. It's a joke.
Here's where I lose the plot, Harry, on the tip of the spear analysis, and then I rarely disagree with Charlie Spears. If that's true, then why not ask for a primetime hearing in front of the 1-6 committee and testify? If you believe in the righteousness of the coup plot, which, and I'm guessing that Bannon believed in the righteousness of stealing from the Build the Wall crowd until he got charge the federal crime. But if you are still down with the insurrection, and if you he was pardoned very, very late. I believe he was pardoned after January 6th. So, I mean, I don't know that this is the best look for the ongoing insurrection. The stronger look, and Claire took this to optics, would be to say, you know, damn right, I'll take the stand. I'll take the stand and tell you everything you want to know because there was fraud and Donald Trump won. And next question. I mean, this is weak.
Right. You know, he could be the Oliver North guy saying it. Here's what I think. Your point is well taken, but the insurrectionist, the real Trump world, is wanting more than anything to thumb its nose at all norms and institutions. They want to say they are all bankrupt, the media, Congress, et cetera. So I think it fits better with that to simply ignore them and just have it out that way. Now, of course, you know, going forward, were he to do that, it would be quite the high wire act, and it could get himself in more trouble. But the big point is, I think the victory, and it was a victory on Friday, isn't just against Bannon, isn't even just for the committee. It's for government norms and institutions that finally sort of stood up. And it's those norms and institutions that he wants to denigrate and say are worthless. And I think the best part of the most congruent way to do that with the Trump scheme is to just ignore them and not give them the benefit of even showing up.
Charlie, I'm not going to play Bannon, but this is from his podcast Friday. He said, we're taking action. That action is we're taking over school boards. We're taking over the Republican Party through the precinct committee strategy. We're taking over all the elections. We're going to get to the bottom of November 3rd, and we're going to decertify the electors. Okay. And you're going to have a constitutional crisis. But you know what? Right. I don't know. He says we've got big boy pants on or something after that. Youngkin won by saying none of that crazy bleep. Right. I mean, what is he doing?
Well, I mean, he's being Steve Bannon. This is his new persona. And to Harry's point there, when I say that he's the tip of the spear, keep in mind that he doesn't need to persuade anyone of anything. He's not trying to win hearts and minds or win an election. What he's trying to do is stir up MAGA world, and by delegitimizing the election and by delegitimizing Congress, he does that. He wants to tear everything down. He is an agent of chaos, and Donald Trump understands the power of chaos, and this is what he is prepared to unleash on American politics.
We will all keep watching. Harry sticks around. Charlie Sykes, Claire McCaskill, thank you so much for spending the hour with us. The next hour of Deadline White House starts after a quick break.